Okay, thank you for joining us here again at the Duang Tulang Hotel. We're very happy to see you all here today for our monthly general meeting. And I am so happy to be able to introduce our main speaker, John Roberts, he's driven down from the Anantara Golden Triangle this morning to share his experience, knowledge, stories of sustainability, elephants, and probably a few other things. Thank you very much. John?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Julia. I'll just wait for this microphone to fire up. Is it working? Yes, it is. Okay, not too loud? Very good. Okay, thank you very much, Julia. Thank you, everybody in the Chiang Mai Expat Club for inviting me down here. This is actually my first public speaking since the whole COVID thing, so please bear with me if I get a little bit nervous and forget what I'm talking about or something like that. Yes, Julia's right. I've come down from Chiang Rai today. It seemed a bit odd asking someone from Chiang Rai to come down to talk to some people from Chiang Mai about elephants, because I guess you're all Chiang Mai is the epicenter of elephants really in northern Thailand. A city, as I'm sure you all know, is built on elephants, and the reason we have a consulate here in what is now the Anantara, and there are consulates in Lampang, Lamphun, Praia, all these nowadays fairly out-of-the-way places, was due to logging, due to the timber industry, and therefore due to elephants. I haven't really put a presentation together as well, I'm terribly sorry, but Julia has loaned me some of her photos from when she comes to visit us in the Golden Triangle. As I say, if I get too much into repeating things you all know, because again, I'm very aware I'm talking to an expat community of people who probably know a lot more about elephants and have been around to know about elephants than perhaps I do. So if I get a little bit too basic, or I talk a little bit too much about myself or about what we do, and you want to get a little bit deeper into the elephants in captivity subject or wild elephants, please do shout out. But for now, I thought I'd talk a little bit about what we do in the Golden Triangle. Have any of you visited us? Are you aware of our work in the Golden Triangle? Well, Julia, yes. Okay, so I'll start with the very basics about what we do. I used to work for, I now work for the head office, but I work for the Anantara Golden Triangle, which was the second Anantara in the group. Predates the Anantara here in Bangkok probably by about 10 years. Sorry, in Chiang Mai, where am I? In Chiang Mai by about 10 years. We have a large area of land up there, about 400 acres. We have the Four Seasons tented camp as well next door to us. And we took over that hotel in 2002. Excuse me, just one second, we'll grab some water. Sorry about this. We took over that hotel in 2002. It had previously been Bamboran, which again, those of you who've been expats for a long, long time will probably have heard of Bamboran, running up there very successfully right in the Golden Triangle from the late 1980s. When Anantara took over that hotel, they noticed they had all of that land. It was basically being used by locals were coming in and hunting on it. It wasn't being used for anything else. A lot of people collecting normai, and then a lot of the grassland that we have, there were traps and people taking birds and all sorts of animals from it, which, it being a conservation area under the Royal Forestry Department, was illegal. So one of the duties we had when we took over the hotel, the RFD told us in no uncertain terms that we had to do some form of conservation and make it a conservation project. Before I got involved, the owners of the hotel, Mr. Bill Heineke, decided that what they wanted to do was have elephants. And my remit, I was working in Nepal at the time, with elephants. We had wild tigers, wild rhinos and everything else, and we got around the jungle on the back of elephants. My remit when I came in was just set up a tourist camp, make us look a unique selling point that makes people want to come who are visiting in Chiang Mai, tourists want to come all the way up to the Golden Triangle. And I know even Chiang Mai natives such as yourselves tend to think of us in Chiang Rai as being on the other side of the moon, a long, long journey. And in those days, before the big fast new road was built, it was an even longer journey. So basically, it was to get people who were coming to Chiang Mai to come up to Chiang Rai and visit the new elephant or the new hotel that they had just bought and refurbished. After about 3 years of doing this, we set up the Golden Triangle Asian Elephant Foundation. I don't know if you remember the previous coronavirus, SARS, which was a big thing at the time. We'd just come through that as I arrived in 2003. The tourism industry was down. A lot of elephants were on the streets. A lot of elephants were begging. There was no place for them to go. We set up a foundation in order basically to get the elephants off the streets. I mean, you saw them a lot in Chiang Mai. We were concentrating mainly in Bangkok to do this. We started out buying elephants. So when we met elephants down, I would go down to Bangkok. I would wait for an elephant to walk past me. I didn't speak much Thai in those days. I speak actually even less now because I've fallen out of practice even worse, but I thought I spoke some Thai. I would talk to the mahout. I'd hand out my business card and say, "You're having a tough time. You don't like being on the streets in Bangkok. Your elephant doesn't like it. We have this place up in the north. Would you like to come and live with us?" They were all from Isan, for the most part from Surin, and they said no. Basically, no, you haven't got the right food, you haven't got the right this, you haven't got the right that. The first elephant to get around that, we said, okay, can we buy your elephant? We want to rescue elephant. I have a rich boss who wants to do this. Can we buy your elephant? He said, yes. And it was that easy. Name your price. They named an exorbitant fee in those days. Actually, compared with what elephants are buying and selling for nowadays, even after COVID, it was a fairly small fee. It was about 180,000 baht. Nowadays, people are buying and selling them for 3 million, so it was still a good deal. But 180,000 was what he thought his elephant was worth. We paid it. Actually, that elephant had been hit by a car. It was in a really bad way. We paid the money. We bought him up and found a mahout for him. He lived very well. In the end, we actually gave him to the Elephant Reintroduction Foundation, so he's currently running wild in the forest around Lampang, no doubt causing trouble to the people who live there because he was a bit of a pest. But anyway, it was a general success story until the next year. The same guy came back to me with 2 elephants. And he'd taken the money we gave him, he'd taken the insurance money from the guy who hit him with a car, and he bought these 2 elephants. And he just walked into the camp and said, "You must rescue these elephants from me because I'm..." Yes, he did. He took the trouble to hire a truck and bring both elephants up to me and said, "You must rescue these elephants from me." One of the hardest things I ever did, actually, this was nigh on 17 years ago now, so I have done tougher things since then, but in those days I was young and fresh-faced and really had to make a tough decision and said, "No, sorry, we can't do that." The penny kind of dropped. In those days also you didn't have all of the good regulation we have now from the Royal Forestry Department, Department of National Parks, Department of Livestock Development, and the provincial people that make sure that it cannot easily be done to catch an elephant from the wild and bring it into captivity. It would be very difficult nowadays. 17 years ago, let's just say not so difficult to imagine. So we reckoned that we were, if we were buying elephants, we were causing the problem. People would just take money. They either breed a new elephant, which would then end up on the streets, or they might actually just catch them from the wild or smuggle them in from Myanmar and all sorts of things that used to go on in the cowboy days. So we had to go back to the first guy that we'd spoken to, the guy from Surin, a guy called Lung Lod, and say to him, "Okay, we know you don't want to come. but we still want to help your elephant. Was it Plum? It was Plum. It was Plum, Julia's favourite elephant, which is another long story towards the end of that. But anyway, we still want to look after your elephant. How can we do it? And so in the end, we started negotiation. And the first thing he said, of course, was Isan food. Okay, we can get that for you. We can get this. We can get it. All of these things. What in the end, it really he wanted was a guarantee that once he'd made the trip all the way up, once he'd come to us, that we were going to be able to look after him for a long time. His elephant as well, but mainly the financial income for himself as well as his elephant. So working with him, we built a model to bring elephants off the streets that basically we covered all of their living costs, their human living costs, all of the elephant living costs. We covered veterinary care, and we pay rent on top of that, which is, and the rent was similar to in the hotel a middle manager. So basically turning these people who had been messed about, had been poor, had been disenfranchised for a very, very long time, and putting them into a position of comfort, which was the plan. After 10 years, it kind of backfired a little bit, and we became a little bit too in help to them. But at the time, the problem that faced us, again 17, 18 years ago, and was here in Chiang Mai, was elephants, and in Bangkok, Pattaya, Phuket, all sorts of places with elephants, had nowhere else to go, there was no tourism, and so they were begging on the streets. We were lucky in 2005 in that we had just opened this brand new sparkling Four Seasons scented camp. We were able to go to guests and say to them, we want $12,000 to look after an elephant for a year, which is basically still, that's around, well, the park's in free fall now, so it's probably not $12,000, but if you want to donate in dollars, we'd be more than happy to take them. But if you can provide $12,000, we will take an elephant from the streets and we will give it a nice home. And that's pretty much how we got started. After a while, things changed. Tourism picked back up. There were other opportunities for mahouts and elephants to go and do other things. So these guys who we had helped, who we had bought off the streets and everything else, started coming to us and saying, I've heard I can earn more money elsewhere. And we said, okay, well, we're giving you good veterinary care, we're giving your elephant a place to do, we haven't really started working, funnily enough to say, we haven't really started concentrating on scientific welfare or improving welfare all that much at that point. We were just an elephant camp that had elephants and plenty of space. We could point out green space, we could point out the elephants could play, we could point out that we were providing veterinary care as well as everything else. Unfortunately, such is the nature of the world, some of our mahouts said, no, we just want money. And in the end, to start off with, we paid it, and we started paying higher and higher rents. And after a while, it kind of dawned on us that we were taking guest donations for a privately registered foundation. We were basically being blackmailed. The two major costs for running an elephant is elephant food, and the other cost was elephant rent. And as elephant rent went up and up and up, we had to say, okay, well, and again, Julian knows, during COVID we had to do it again to a certain extent. Basically, we're flushing donors' money down the toilet. It's just going. We can't find ourselves being blackmailed. We have to stick with the mahouts, stick with the elephants if you like. Well, the elephants didn't have much choice, which is a good argument against elephants in captivity, as the elephants don't get to choose. But we stuck to the mahouts who wanted to work with us, the owners who wanted to work with us, and we just had to say bye-bye to the other elephants. We didn't give up, though. We decided what we were going to do with our extra money was to try and do something different, to try and make bigger changes. Instead of spending $12,000 a year looking after one elephant, most of it goes straight through the elephant, basically elephant food, 40% efficient, 60% of it on the ground below. The other money, elephant mahout food, mahout rental, straight down the toilet. We would try and spend maybe $24,000 a year and look after 200 elephants in the wild, to try and look and look at some bigger things, try and do some more work. Also at that time, thanks to some campaigning organisations who operate within Thailand and in the West, but also to ourselves, a great deal of thanks to Chiang Mai University and the Thai Elephant Conservation Centre across in Lampang. Some of us, a lot of us, not everyone unfortunately, but a lot of us were beginning to realise that the way elephant keeping has changed, and a lot of people talk about the elephant keeping tradition being 4,000 years old, and it is 4,000 years old, possibly even older. There's some cave paintings up in Shan State somewhere that a guy from Singapore has discovered that seem to show that even the idea of riding elephants in this area is older than 4,000 years old. But we were beginning to realise, as we go more and more into elephants' needs, that the way things had been done for 4,000 years was not necessarily always the best way to do things for elephants. On top of that, again, as the tradition has come, for the majority of those 4,000 years, there was a lot of space, there was a lot of jungle. The elephants would do a hard day's work, no doubt, whether it be working in warfare, whether it be working in logging, whether it be working in providing transportation, which for all of that time had been pretty much the three major jobs. Logging slightly more recent from colonial times onwards, or not in Thailand obviously, but Myanmar and now colonial times, and then Thailand or Lama's reaction to that. But anyway, almost all of that time, when the elephant had finished work, they were let off into the jungle. If you look at some of the old logging company regulations under the foreign companies, or if you look under the Myanmar Timber Enterprises logging regulations, elephants still have in Myanmar registered days off. They can work 5 days, but they have to have 2 days off. They get 3 months off, I think it is, in the dry season. There are very, very strict limits as to how much an elephant can pull, how much it can carry, how hard it's going to work. Now, whether under the current regime, the MTE, the Myanmar Timber Enterprises, is sticking to these rules, I don't know. But certainly in previous days, or in previous eras, there is evidence to show that the tradition of keeping elephants was very different to what it has evolved into now, where unfortunately mahouts have realised that elephants can live on the streets of Bangkok, or in places like Surin, where you see it most often, can live in very, very small conditions without access to forests, without access to other elephants, and elephants will stay alive. And they can look, because it's a generation or two, it's been slowly working that way, they can look around and say, this is our tradition. Or was I? I was on my soapbox, wasn't I? This is not to say that the mahouts are bad guys, but quite often what we were starting to do was starting to say that maybe what we were calling tradition, which we hadn't questioned too much for the first 5, 6, 7 years I was doing this, maybe what we were calling tradition could be worked with in order to bring in what we begin to learn from science about what elephants need in order to try and make life better for Thailand's captive elephants. In those days, people, I don't think, knew even how many elephants there were in captivity. The count didn't start really happening until 5 or 6 years ago. So our main program was to try and work with mahouts to try and change how they worked, or maybe their perception of working with elephants, to try and bring into this idea that as the science progresses, and most of the science comes from Chiang Mai University at the moment, as the science progresses, as we learn more and more about what elephants need intellectually as well as physically, to live, not only to live but to thrive, to try and work with the mahouts within their tradition to try and bring this forward, to try and make life better, not only for the elephants that we have in our little camp of about 20 elephants, but throughout, in some cases throughout Southeast Asia. Our main program, and the one I'm probably most proud of when it comes to captive elephants, is our target training program. So there's a lot of, the mahouts grow up with elephants. Some of these kids are born on elephants. But there's sometimes a lot of misunderstanding between mahouts and how they read elephant behaviour. It doesn't help, I think, also that a lot of them come from very traditional human families, where if they do something wrong in the house, their dad just hits them on top of the head. They do something in school wrong, the teacher hits them on the head. So a lot of mahouts come forward with this idea that the only way to solve something wrong is through punishment. Also, a lot of times they have such a good relationship with their elephants, and this sounds funny to say, but they have such a good relationship with their elephants that they think even though they're speaking human language, the elephant understands what they're saying all the time. So you'll see, you can go to any camp in Thailand and see this, particularly actually the good camps. They'll be walking alongside having a conversation with their elephant, which their elephant can understand, not the words, but can understand a certain amount of their body language and everything else, but obviously isn't understanding the nuance. The problem then comes when they ask the elephant to do something, and because she doesn't understand what she's doing, go and pick that up. And the elephant probably doesn't even notice she's noticed he's waved his arms around a bit and he's said something, do something, but she has no idea what he's asked her to do, because he just thinks, oh, she understands. And then they get the idea that she's refusing to do it because she's a naughty elephant. And that is one of the reasons, after 20 years of watching elephants and mahouts, I think a lot of, it sounds simple, but it seems like a lot of the problem of where mahouts start being nasty to elephants stems from that very, very simple time that they don't understand the way the elephant is thinking. So I didn't invent this, I just saw it happening in zoos in the West, and in horse culture actually in Australia, where this idea that you need to think how the elephants think before you tell them what to do or ask them to do something is important. So basically it was over 10 years ago now, we set about trying to find ways to teach mahouts how to think how the elephant is thinking. Because if you march into somebody's 4,000 plus year tradition and say, even as somebody who I've been around for 20 years, I've got a bit of respect in the game, but if I march into a mahout village and say, you're all doing this wrong, do it differently, they're going to say, nah, we like you, John, because you smile and you drink whiskey with us and you've been paying us for 20 years, whatever, but you're wrong on this point, with respect, sir, which they wouldn't say, of course they'd just say no. So what we did is he found us, a Mexican zoo vet of all people, a great guy called Dr. Gerardo Martinez, who is one of the world's best large animal trainers. And he came into our camp one day as a volunteer. He didn't tell us anything about who he was, and we had an elephant with long toenails. I guess if you're not elephant people, you don't know that elephants' fingernails grow like ours. In the wild, like horses' hooves. In the wild, that doesn't really matter because they're walking 20 kilometers a day to find food, to find water, to find everything else. In captivity, one of the biggest problems you'll see around Thailand, if you know, I hate to patronize, but if you know what you're looking for, is bad toes. Most of Thailand's elephants, at least 10 years ago, needed a pedicure. They weren't getting much exercise. Their nails were growing in funny angles. They had really difficulty sometimes walking it. You can actually send an elephant lame. In Nepal, where I used to work, they used to have a tradition of foot care, but in Thailand, if there was a tradition of foot care for elephants, possibly because the elephants in the old days, possibly there wasn't because the elephants were logging most of the time, and as I say, living free at night, living free for their 2 days off a week, their 3 months off a year, maybe there never was a tradition, but in Thailand, it was something that was unheard of. And this guy, this Mexican, turned up just as a random vet volunteer in camp. Many elephant camps take volunteers. Said, would you like, this elephant has trouble. He's having trouble walking. 10 minutes, or 10 minutes, oh goodness me. Okay, 10 minutes. Okay, I will begin to wrap up and just say that he basically showed us how to go to this bull elephant who never had his feet touched, was nervous as anything. He, in 2 days, did that elephant's front nails. And he used a technique called target training, which is positive reinforcement. When you do it properly, you do it behind a wall, so the elephant and the mahout are safe, or the mahout's safe from the elephant, and then you show the elephant how to, using positive reinforcement, reward only, you get the elephant to present any body part. You can get it to blow out of its trunk, you can get these paintings, hopefully, fingers crossed, these painting shows you see up in the parks up in Metain, Metaman, those places, you can train that, you can train any behaviour you like. But you've got to think how the elephant thinks, because you're not allowed to go in there and do the old traditional thing of use a sharp pointy thing to move it around. You can't inflict pain, which is the old way of moving elephants around, particularly when they needed to train them. You have to actually make the elephant decide it wants to do something. So since I only have 10 minutes left, I thought this was going to go too short. 15, okay. But I've got to cover COVID yet. So anyway, basically 10 years ago we set up this target training program. We have it running daily in our camp. We brought vets and people all over Southeast Asia. We brought mahouts from all over Southeast Asia. We used to go into camps, and they used to look at us and go, okay, we've got these 2 guys from Mexico, 1 foreign guy from Chiang Mai. Says he's a mahout, rambles on in Thai badly. We're going to give him the toughest elephant. The toughest elephant, the elephant that's never been touched. No one can control this elephant, and we're going to say, okay, he wants to tell us he can train an elephant. Prove it. And these guys behind a wall, so it's safe. The first time the elephant comes in, it tries to bash down the wall, so you feed it some sunflower seeds or something until it calms down a bit. Second session comes in. Within a day and a half, you can train the elephant to provide its foot. It can sit there and leave its foot there while you do its nails and everything else. I once saw within a day and a half, 2 Kachin, this was down in Waisao in Myanmar, 2 Kachin kids, mahouts from Kachin, had come all the way down to the south to the beach, first time they'd seen the sea. 2 Kachin mahouts using a Myanmar translator, they spoke some Myanmar language, Myanmar translator into English into, Gerardo obviously speaks Spanish as the first language, but he speaks some English, so all through those language gaps, to a bull elephant they'd never met before, train it to blow water out of its trunk, which is it's something important if you're testing for TB. And they did that in a day and a half. So effective. And if you can do that, the difference between going and demonstrating how this thing works and walking into the village and saying you're doing it all wrong, you must follow my thing, it's very different. The mahouts really buy into it and they start to think how the elephants think. I won't go into our other techniques or our wild elephant work because I have been talking too long already. Basically, I'd like to talk a little bit now about COVID and tourism and what happened to tourism. And I guess you all know that we've had some sort of pandemic thing, and it wasn't very good for tourism and pretty much everything else. The whole area died. Now, there was a bit of debate prior to COVID as to whether tourism going away would benefit elephants. I'm not talking about COVID, it's just basically get rid of tourism, the elephants will be fine. Is an argument that is going around the world that is not, it was debatable. Unfortunately, COVID was tough on all the elephants, I've got to say, with possible exception of the elephants of ours, because we had some great support, people like Julia. We had support from our great, the Anantara group who helped us out a lot. Life got worse for just about every elephant under COVID. There has been, actually, it's not published yet, and this is somebody else's work, so I hesitate to present it. It's definitely not my work. Kunjarawi from the Centre of Elephant, I'm going to read this now because they keep changing their name, but the Centre of Elephant and Wildlife Health or in Chiang Mai University and the Smithsonian Institution have, not published yet, have done a paper on the effect of COVID crisis on tourism, elephant camp management and elephant welfare in Chiang Mai. And this doesn't cover the elephants in Surin and Pattaya and all the other places where it got much, much worse. But basically, over COVID, while we were all trying to keep the elephants alive, they were also studying what happened. They went into 28 camps with over 400 elephants, and basically, as I say, this isn't my work, so forgive me for reading it. Basically, what happened was chaining hours got longer, chains got shorter. Body condition, actually, the elephants lost weight, which in certain cases wasn't a bad thing, because a lot of the tourism elephants were too fat. But a lot of the elephants, I can tell you from the veterinary side, got very, very sick because they went from high quality diet to low quality diet. We actually, as a camp, were supporting 13 vets throughout Chiang Mai, one in the south, but the rest 12 throughout Chiang Mai, to go and give free veterinary care to any elephant, supporting the government, the TECC in Lampan and places. So I can tell you that the condition got a lot worse. Elephants got very, very sick. And then the overall stress of all the elephants, actually, when tourism was gone, one of the things we thought might happen is they might become less stressed. And you can tell the stress of an elephant if you're a clever scientist by picking some elephant dung, sorting through for some cortisol in it, and to try and test the stress hormones. And thanks to the Smithsonian, Chiang Mai University has a lab that is able to do this, and some very, very good scientists. So actually, during COVID, when tourism totally disappeared, the stress increased. Now, this isn't to say tourism is universally a good thing. A lot of elephants were really not well looked after under tourism. But it does mean now the focus for us, myself as an elephant camp manager of myself, but I also sit on the captive elephant working group, and I sit on Asian elephants, various other groups anyway. The focus, mainly driven by Chiang Mai University, is, and again TECC in Lampang, is to try, when tourism opens up, how do we open it up with some basic welfare guidelines in place. We now understand more than ever, thanks to science and thanks to observation and thanks to a lot of history, what elephants need physically and mentally. How do we reopen tourism as it is opening up? How do we make sure it does this with some at least basic welfare standards in place? Actually, the last time I was in this hotel, we were with the Department of Livestock Development, so hopefully by the end of the year, possibly by middle of next year, there will be some basic mandatory minimum standards for elephant camps. They're not quite as far-reaching as many would like them to be, but basically with 3,800 elephants around the place, with unfortunately in certain places very low standard already, the minimum standards, if you're going to make them mandatory, have to be somewhat achievable. There are other higher standards as well, and a company called Asian Captive Elephant Standards are beginning to audit camps, mainly because they've got funding to do it in Laos and Myanmar, not Myanmar at the moment, Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia, Indonesia, but they will work in Thailand as well. So the goal is it? But basically to end on a happy note, tourism will reopen. I hope I've gone a little bit into what we do. And during COVID, we had actually, because we had lots of space and lots of support from around the world, we actually had fun in COVID, and were able to take in elephants, and were able to expand what we were doing, as well as offering extra support to the veterinary teams and to start. At one point, we were sending extra fodder to 66 elephants around Chiang Mai and those sorts of things. But the happy note is things are opening up. The government is aware and awake to the problems of elephant welfare. The best scientists, in fact the only scientists studying captive elephant welfare really, some in India, but really on a granular, microscopic level, are in Chiang Mai University, and that means Chiang Mai is actually one of the best places, as things open up, that the elephants will get.
And you can keep going. Dave's giving you some more time.
Oh, I've just got onto the wrap-up now. Anyway, so that's a happy note.
To me, a day late and $1 short.
Yeah, it's the story of my life as well. So basically, things are moving forward. The focus at the moment, run not by Farangs from, even better news, it's not, as with the greatest of respect to all of us expats here, not run by Farangs coming down from Chiang Mai to talk to rooms full of other Farangs and things like that. Actually, the Thai folks, the really good Thai scientists, Thai vets, my Thai team up, they're not my team, they don't belong to me, I managed to find money for them. The Thai team up there have been down here twice to Chiang Mai to conferences to try and say, okay, as we open up, how do we make sure we know we need tourism to feed these elephants. They all eat 100 or 200 and something kilograms of food a day. Mahouts need paying, they're humans, they need life as well. How do we do it? How do we make sure that there's some basic welfare standards? So the very bottom of the camps will have to rethink about how they do things, and the top end of the camps will be able to rise forward and help more elephants and keep the elephants alive, while we have the debate about whether we need more elephants in captivity, which, if I have another hour, I can talk about. No. So that's it, I think. Any questions? Do I have time for questions?
Yes, you have time for questions, Laura.
Yeah, is the Mexican guy still with you?
was always.
Repeat the question, please.
Okay, so the question is Dr. Gerardo, the Mexican vet, still with us? He was always somebody we flew over with one of his partners in crime whenever we needed to do a workshop. He's currently actually working in a zoo in the Middle East. The good news is, before COVID, and now we can start getting together again, they trained up. We have one very, very good trainer in our camp. We have another very good trainer in Turin, another very good trainer, and these are local guys, another very good trainer in Cambodia, and one more in Laos as well, that we trained up. So the bad news is I probably don't have as much of an excuse to fly my Mexican friend over here and drink beer whilst everybody else does all the work again. The good news is there are local trainers, so when we do workshops, which we will do, now COVID is going away, we'll be able to do it equally. And actually, the demonstration works well. It works even better when, to play the devil's advocate, when you're in a Thai camp and a Lao guy comes in and shows them how to do it, then they really all want to come and make it work, make it happen.
Well, thank you. It was fascinating. Can you please take us through how we can go and visit?
Can come and visit us in the Golden Triangle. We have that book a stay at Anantara Golden Triangle. It's as simple as that. We do accept outside guests as well from time to time. So Julia has my contact. You can badger Julia.
Right.
She knows how to visit. But yeah, we're the Anantara Golden Triangle, way up in far north Thailand. Literally in the Golden Triangle. The river we bathe our elephants in, not on the screen at the moment, is the border with Myanmar. You come up as far as you can, and we're just in Chiang Mai. And yeah, come and stay with us. And that's the easiest way.
Have a beer with
And have a beer, yes.
Yeah, that sounds like a good
How do you know about that?
You mentioned it.
Okay.
Many of us here have family and friends who come and visit, and they always want to see elephants. Here in Chiang Mai, many can't make the trip up to Chiang Rai or Chiang Sen. Are there some local around Chiang Mai camps and programs that you would recommend, if you're allowed to do that, for us to recommend to our visitors?
Yes. It's very difficult to vouch for other camps all the time. The one I really like, let's just say the person who, or the camp that stood up the most during COVID and looked beyond their own camp and really tried to help all the elephants was Kunpat from Patara Elephant Farm. He and Dr. Tip, the vet there, the Thai Elephant Alliance, they're called. Okay, there you go. That's the right answer. Always lucky. I don't know the ins and outs of what they do behind the scenes. I know Pat fairly well though. But when it really counted, when there were these elephants that needed help, they were the guys that turned around and they started driving forward. They were first to react and further. The main advice I would give to anyone, and unfortunately COVID stemmed it out a little bit, we are audited. And Pat isn't, which is why I'm a little bit awkward. I keep trying to persuade him to get audited, is to look for camps with either Asian Captive Elephant Standards audit. There is one from Travel Life for tour operators, but you'd have to be a tour operator to know about that. But you can ask the camp, have you been audited? And then there's Global Spirit. So there are 3 science-based auditing. And even if the camp didn't pass the audit, I would still say you can ask who audited them. I think it's worth talking to them before somebody else who refuses an audit. Because the audit process, I can tell you, the Global Spirit was 4 days. Most of them are 1 or 2 days. Those guys come, they look at everything. They've already studied your advertising and everything before they come to you. They look at all your paperwork, make sure you're legal, make sure you're acting and everything else. They look at all your policies and procedures, force you to have them written down and signed. But then they also go behind the scenes, and there's always a Thai-speaking guy with them. They will go, or lady, and they speak to the mahouts and just say, does this really happen? And it means a lot to me in the elephant business, having seen a lot of different camps and a lot of different operators, that the people in general who are doing the best are the ones who are not ashamed to have someone go behind the scenes and in the full knowledge that that result will be published somewhere to someone who may be a potential customer. If it's the secret, the Travel Life one is a bit secret because it goes through tourism operations, but it's still, if you're prepared to have someone go behind the scenes in what you do, have a look at everything as well as assume that you're legal and test your advertising is reality as well, that to me shows possibly more than anyone can stick a sign on the gate and say green or eco or something else. It prevents greenwashing. So look. If you want to choose a camp, ask have they been audited and who have they been audited by, and look for captive elephant standards, Travel Life, or Global Spirit. They're the good ones at the moment.
Hi. You led into the question I'm about to ask, and I actually have two questions. First question is, do we need elephants in captivity? And the second question is, how we as a group can help support you?
Okay, so do we need elephants in captivity? That is 3 hours. No. This is my opinion. I could be hanged and thrown out of the country for it, so don't repeat that. They won't throw me out of the country for it. I am one of the very few people in the captive elephant business that says, I don't think we need elephants in captivity. So, okay, let me rephrase that before I get thrown out of the country. From a conservation perspective, for the survival of the species, and for other reasons like having elephants, no. For those reasons, we don't need it. All the jobs they used to do can now be done more efficiently, in a way more cleanly, by a diesel engine. And for conservation of the species, they are almost, well, certainly within Thailand, within India, Sri Lanka fairly well, Cambodia not too bad. Where they exist and where the land is protected, they're looking after themselves very well, the wild elephants. They're certainly under threat still. We have to work on conservation. I didn't talk about our wild elephant projects. But yeah, one of the reasons we don't breed elephants, which I also didn't get into, is that elephant's going to live for 70 years. I don't think we need elephants in captivity. It's not my decision to make, because culturally, it is a very strong part of Thai culture. So the diplomatic answer, which I forgot to give because I haven't spoken in public for a long time, is basically what we need to do, I think, is open a debate with the powers that be in Thailand, the old, unfortunately usually old men sitting around the place, to say to have an idea how many elephants they need in captivity for cultural purposes, and then a scientific way of working towards that. At the moment, it's cowboy country. Anyone with a female elephant can breed and produce a baby elephant, and there's no stud book, there's no gene pool, there's no nothing. To answer the question, culturally probably yes. So I've changed my mind because I want to stay in the country, but really for other reasons, I don't believe so. So what we have to do, because we're not going to get to the point of everyone standing up. India, funnily enough, is the only government in the range state that has a policy to reduce their captive elephant numbers to 0, and that's a federal policy, and the states aren't following it. Where they have a policy, every other range state has a policy of more is better to save the species, which I don't believe to be necessary if you've got wild elephants running well, but culturally, definitely, Thailand's culture needs elephants, but we have to make a decision how many we need, how many we can look after well. Well, the decision how many we need should be based on how many we can look after well, because I don't think we can look after 8,000 well without some form of mass tourism, and it's incredibly difficult to look after elephants well during mass tourism. How can you support? Come and visit us, that helps. Donations are also welcome. We do spend them well. We're a Thai registered foundation. We do have wider things. Oh, our website is helpingelephants.org, thank you very much. Our Facebook is GTAF Helping Elephants. I do sometimes go live on Facebook as well if you want to hit, if you have not bored of me already. This is Julia's paper. I better stop reading that now. Okay, so this is now getting into. Okay, so we're segueing slightly into the vision. So this is a special request. We're talking about basically most of our mahouts. So I've talked a lot about Chiang Mai, obviously because that's where we are and that's where we're from and that's what we all know, and that was kind of topical. But because most of our elephants were ex-street-begging elephants, the mahouts that we tend to have with us are from Surin. The Soy people, they do have another name, but it's too difficult to pronounce without getting very, very rude. And they are the main Siamese elephant owning, less known in the English literature, but the main, in the old days when the kingdom of Siam and everything else, they were the main elephant owning and catching people. And their tradition goes back many, many thousands of years. They came out of Laos 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, settled in Ban Tak Lang, in what was swamp and grassland elephant territory, in what is now Surin province. Surin province, just about across the river from Buriram. And their culture is based on elephant catching. They are Buddhists. They have a monk and a temple. But every house has a shrine, and in that shrine is an elephant catching rope, which is made out of buffalo hide and actually egg yolk to make it stick together. And it is their sacred tradition, and every time that theoretically every time they go on a journey or they move an elephant or do anything really, really elephant related, they will ask this rope for permission. They then have a full ceremony when they talk to the spirits and everything else, and then they look at the tongue bone of a chicken, and if the tongue bone of the chicken is not straight enough, and I've never had this happen to me, so I've never seen a bad one, and if that tongue bone is not straight enough, allegedly the whole mission, whatever you're planning, can be called off. They've never done it to me, and that would have been based on the idea is when you're going to catch elephants from the forest, you need the permission of the spirits. There are all sorts of other rules that they have to abide by when they go on hunting missions. They're not allowed to eat ants or ducks, because the ants or ducks might alert the spirit. They have this whole different language that they speak when they're in the forest, which isn't Thai, isn't Khmer, isn't all the other languages they speak. It's purely so when they're discussing things in the forest, the elephant spirits, or the spirits of the forest, don't hear them and alert the wild elephants to their presence. Okay, we've got to stop. But basically, the other year we had to move our sacred rope, which we did, and Julia was present. That was amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. This is my place of joy, and it was wonderful to be able to share it and John with you. So thank you all. So next we would like